if you're afraid of the consequences. We can simply leave.
I admire your principled stance, Domine. But do you understand the consequences? They are likely to execute you. Are you sure you want to do this?
Don't do this, please. I feel like I just found you. We can just leave. This is the right choice. We continue. Onwards to new adventures.
I'll make the arrangements, Domine. But I was always free, child. I chose to serve you. Nothing can change my mind.
There are some who say it was a sudden change of heart that turned a would-be tyrant from his throne. Most accept the common story. A man pushed to his very limit by the machinations of a corrupt consul. A republic on the brink of becoming an empire, vulnerable to the ambitions of unscrupulous men. A desperate, unlawful action that saved the republic at the cost of one man's career and reputation. Although in one sense the legatus never returned to Rome, in another, greater sense, he never left. With his earth-shaking actions, he had set Rome upon a course that would guide it through history for centuries to come. It is said that he retired to a villa in Cisalpine Gallia. He remained in touch with those of his friends in the Senate who still stood by his side. He lived a long and peaceful life in the republic he had saved. As his dominus left Rome in exile, Lord Cineros chose to stay behind. There was just enough time for the Servus to get the manumission he had been promised before he was left to his own devices. For a time, he stayed with Liliana at her invitation, until he had earned enough denarii as a teacher of Greek to get a small place of his own. He continued to teach her children, but this time in exchange for payment. Cineros still had many powerful and influential friends in the city, and thanks to them, he enjoyed access to well-stocked libraries and well-educated conversation. Ultimately, what gave Cineros peace was the knowledge that he had long since unburdened himself with the guilt of the mistakes of his youth. In his final days, he was able to return to Greece at last, and died there, satisfied. When his friends left Rome, Caeso stayed behind in the city to settle down with Lucia and their daughter. Though their relationship was distant at first, the shared love they felt for their daughter soon brought them close, and eventually they had more children together. To his surprise, Caeso took well to the quiet life and to fatherhood, and on the few occasions when he did feel that old lust for adventure bubble back to the surface, he would leave Rome for a time and visit his friends in exile, who were always glad to see him. Even though it began in exile, Callida's second marriage turned out considerably better than her first. Away from the rigid society of Rome, she flourished with her new husband. Together they traveled far and wide, and had many more adventures, until they found a place they liked enough to settle down. Callida was happy to find that it was possible to be a wife and a mother without giving up the things she loved. She taught their children archery and horseback riding, and nobody ever again looked down on her for her unwomanly pursuits. Bestia returned to Africa to look for his sister again. Eventually, he did find her, and together they returned to Mauretania, where they settled down in an idyllic village and started new families of their own. In this new, quiet life, Bestia learned the true value of happiness. Deianira followed her friend into exile. Rome had never quite lived up to her expectations, and she was glad to leave it behind. Eventually, she returned to her homelands of Scythia, where she reconnected with her family. But she always remained in contact with her friends, visiting frequently with new stories and exotic spices from distant lands. Vitellius Scaevola left Roman politics and moved to Upper Latium with his wife Liliana, where they raised their children together in peace. Cato remained an important figure in Roman politics. Grudgingly respected even by those among the population who desired change, he remained a defender of the patrician class. a shield against the pandering and opportunism of more populist voices. He himself was elected consul twice throughout his life, and his years in the position were generally favorably regarded. Cicero served one more year as consul before his retirement. In his old days, he lived a quiet life on a farm in Sicily, where he was greatly beloved by the people for his time as quaestor. He continued to write many books on politics and law. With Mithridates dead and his sons lacking his ability to rule, Pontus was soon annexed by Rome. The region never again rose to prominence. With Zenobia in charge of Musia, it became once more a peaceful part of the Roman province of Asia Minor. With her focus on trade and strong ties to the neighboring regions, her people enjoyed a period of great prosperity. Without the leadership of Damianos, the rebellion of his gladiators soon spiraled out of control, beginning what became known as the Servile War. Escaped slaves terrorized the Roman citizens throughout Thracia until the wealthy senator Crassus brutally defeated them and crucified thousands along the road towards Rome. With the death of the Pharaoh Ptolemy and Queen Cleopatra, the Ptolemaic dynasty had fallen. Despite the attempts of Rome to hold the nation together under their rule, a bloody war of succession soon arose between various parties claiming to be descendants of the pharaoh. Rome was forced to send its legions to Egypt once again to restore stability by crushing the enemies of the Republic and rule Egypt with an iron fist. With the death of Cleopatra and under the steady guidance of Lunya, Nezarmenes once more became a peaceful and prosperous part of Africa Proconsularis, firmly aligned with Rome. As the eldest and most respected elder of the Berber tribes, Lunya became a singular figure of leadership and respect in the region. She was said to be more than 100 years old when she died. After traveling all across Africa for many years, going wherever her instincts took her, Rhea eventually returned to Memphis and to the service of Tener at the Temple of Ubasti. When her mentor passed away, Rhea naturally assumed the mantle as High Priestess of the Cat Goddess. Though the old faith was dwindling, she was greatly beloved by many, and her temple prospered, always home to many, many, many cats. With Diwydiachus once more assuming rulership of the Aedui, the tribe maintained a strong alliance with Rome, and through it, they greatly prospered. With the aid of the Aedui, Gallia slowly unified under Roman rule, and civilization soon began to creep into those lands in the form of paved roads, aqueducts, and fortified Roman towns. In his old age, did the Druid ever regret hastening the absorption and suppression of his own faith and culture? We will never know. The defeat and death of Vercingetorix had reduced the once mighty Awerni tribe to a myriad bickering chieftains. Without his vision, his charisma, and his resolve, there was no unifying figure to rally around, and no way for Gallia to resist their slow but inevitable assimilation into Rome. Perhaps if Vercingetorix had lived, some of their culture or religion might have survived in some form. But surely they must be grateful that civilization at last was brought to their lands. In this work, I have done my best to recount the history of this fascinating period, truthfully and accurately. As I have scoured the sources and spoken to many who claimed to have heard the story from someone who was there at the time, one thing that has stood out to me is the pivotal moments along the way where our story could have turned out very differently. Might the legatus and his friends have remained in Rome to influence its politics in the years to come? Certainly, when Legio Victrix crossed the Rubicon, the only way to remain in Rome would have been as its emperor. But perhaps if a different decision had been made on that fateful bridge, a more peaceful resolution would have been possible. One should always take care when second-guessing historical figures with the benefit of hindsight. Here in the present, there will never truly be a way for you to know how you might have acted if you had lived in the past. Nor can you ever be certain how history will remember you.